Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're all about getting to the heart of complex topics, really understanding them without getting bogged down in,
Yeah.
like endless details. And today, well, we're diving into something that I think is really at the core of how societies change and evolve,
Yeah.
speaking up for justice.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, you think about it. Speaking up for justice can be so many things. It can be, like a quiet conversation where you're trying to point out something that seems wrong. It can be, well, these huge protests we see sometimes that challenge, the way things are.
Yeah, exactly. And we've been looking at a whole range of sources, books, articles, interviews, you name it. And we really want to lay out for you like a clear picture of what this whole thing is about. Why do
Mm.
people speak up? What happens when they do? What are the risks? How do they actually make a difference? We're going to cover it all.
Absolutely. And one thing that really stands out from all this material is just how complicated this act of speaking up really is. Like, it's not just about shouting the loudest or being the most, well, outspoken. There's a whole lot more to it.
So let's start with the basics. Like, why do people even bother to speak up in the first place? It's not always easy, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it can even be kind of dangerous. But over and over in the stuff we read, there's this theme of personal experience being like this initial spark. People see injustice happening, either directly to them or to others, and something inside them says, okay, this is wrong. I got to do something.
Right. And it's not just seeing it, it's that feeling you get, that sort of dissonance when you see something that clashes with, your sense of what's right. It creates this need to sort of restore balance, to make things right again.
Like a gut feeling almost.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that this sense of right and wrong, it seems to run pretty deep. It's not just about personal preference, it's about a deeper moral obligation, like a feeling that you're duty bound to do something when you see basic ethical principles being violated.
Yeah, and if you think about it, that's actually really important for keeping a society just,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Because people didn't have that sense of, hey, this is wrong and I got to do something. Well, a lot of injustices might just slide under the radar.
It's like a built-in alarm system almost. It keeps us on track. And I think for our listeners, it's helpful to remember this. It's not just about some big abstract idea of justice. It often comes down to these very personal, very human feelings and responses to things that just feel wrong.
Okay, so we've got this personal level, right? But then you zoom out and you look at history and wow. I mean, there are some pretty amazing examples of speaking up that have led to some really, like world-changing stuff. You think about Martin Luther King Jr., right? I mean,
Yeah.
he's like the poster child for speaking up for justice.
And what's incredible about Dr. King is how he was able to do it so effectively. He wasn't just, like yelling and screaming. He was really strategic. He used nonviolent resistance, and his communication was just so powerful. Like his "I have a dream" speech. I mean, it wasn't just words. It was like he was capturing this moral urgency for equality that just, well, resonated with so many people. And that's a huge part of what led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
So it's not just about speaking up, it's about how you do it.
Absolutely. And it's about consistency, too. Like, you got to keep at it. And you got to be willing to put yourself out there, even when it's risky. And speaking of risky, I mean, Rosa Parks, right? Refusing to give up her seat on that bus back in 1955, that was huge.
Yeah, and it seems like such a small thing, like on the surface of it, but it sparked this whole movement. It was like this perfect symbol of just how unfair segregation was.
Exactly. And it shows that sometimes even these seemingly small acts of defiance, when they hit at the core of an injustice, they can really ignite things. The Montgomery bus boycott was a direct result of her bravery. And it wasn't just a symbolic victory either. It actually led to the desegregation of public transportation.
So it's like this domino effect. Like one person's courage can have these huge ripple effects.
Precisely. And you see it in more recent history, too. Malala Yousafzai, for example, her advocacy for girls' education, even after being attacked, really put a spotlight on this issue on a global scale.
Yeah, her story is just so powerful. It really made it clear that girls' education isn't just some like policy issue. It's about basic human rights.
And it really resonated with people. Her story cut through all the politics and the complexities and just spoke to this fundamental human desire for everyone to have a chance to learn and grow. And think about the impact. It inspired so many initiatives all over the world aimed at making education more accessible for girls.
So we've got these huge historical figures, but our sources also talk about these like more everyday examples of speaking up, right? Like what about someone who sees discrimination happening at their workplace? I mean, that's got to be scary to speak up about, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the fear of retaliation is totally understandable. But what's really encouraging is that when people do find the courage to report these things, it can lead to some real changes. In one example we looked at, it led to a whole review of the company's policies and the creation of a diversity and inclusion committee.
So it's not just about addressing the individual case, it's about creating a better environment for everyone.
Exactly. And it takes a lot of guts to be that person who speaks up first, But it can really pave the way for a more just and equitable workplace for everyone.
And then there's the story of this grassroots environmental activists. They were trying to rally their community against this, like industrial pollution that was happening. And, that kind of stuff can take years, right? Like it's not an overnight thing.
And it's often driven by this deep love for their community, and a sense of responsibility for protecting the environment. And what's so inspiring about this story is that they actually managed to get the media involved, and it ended up leading to some real policy changes.
Wow, so local action can actually lead to big changes.
It can, absolutely, especially when people come together and make their voices heard. And what I think is so crucial for our listeners to understand is that speaking up isn't just something that happened in the past or that only famous people do. It's happening all around us, in our workplaces, our communities, everywhere, and it can have a real impact.
But it's not always easy, right? I mean, we have to talk about the risks. Like, our sources were pretty clear that sometimes speaking up can have some pretty serious consequences.
Yeah, no sugarcoating it. There are risks. One of the big ones is social ostracism, right? People might get pushed away by their friends, their families, their communities just for speaking their mind. That can be really isolating.
And in terms of work, I mean, people could lose their jobs, right? Or get passed over for promotions. And then there's this fear of being labeled a troublemaker, which could follow you around.
It's this difficult balance, isn't it? The desire to do what's right versus the need to protect yourself and your livelihood. And unfortunately, sometimes the risks are even more serious. People face harassment, intimidation, even violence.
It's heavy stuff, and it makes you realize that speaking up takes a lot of courage. But despite all that, our sources really emphasize that it's still so important. Like, we can't just stay silent in the face of injustice.
Absolutely. And that's where support systems come in.
Yeah.
Because facing those risks alone, well, it can be incredibly daunting. But knowing that there are people and organizations out there who have your back, that can make all the difference.
Like, we saw examples of these organizations that provide all kinds of support, right? Legal advice, training, they even help amplify people's voices so they're not just shouting into the void.
It's about making people feel less alone, less isolated. And online platforms play a big role here, too. Think about social media. It's like this huge network where people can connect with others who share their concerns and build these online communities of support.
Yeah, and hashtags, right. They can turn into these massive awareness campaigns that reach millions of people. It's pretty amazing.
And let's not forget about the power of personal relationships. Having close friends and family who support you, who you can talk to, who can listen, that's so valuable.
Yeah, that kind of emotional support can really help people stay strong and resilient, especially when things get tough. Okay, so we've talked about why people speak up, the risks, the support systems, but how do you actually do it effectively? Like, what are some strategies that actually work?
Well, one of the most fundamental things is being able to clearly articulate what your concerns are. You have to really understand the issue, do your research, consider different perspectives, and then figure out how to communicate your message in a way that's clear, concise, and impactful.
Like, you can't just rant and rave.
Right.
You have to be able to explain your position in a way that makes sense to others.
Exactly. And then it's about engaging with the right people, building relationships with community leaders, policymakers, even those who might disagree with you. It's about finding common ground, and working together to find solutions.
So it's not always about confrontation. Sometimes it's about collaboration.
Exactly. And personal stories can be so powerful here. Sharing your own experiences or the experiences of others can really help people connect with the issue on a human level. And it's about using the right platforms, too. Social media is great for spreading awareness quickly, but sometimes you need to take it offline, Organize protests, town hall meetings, things like that.
And petitions, right? Those can be a really effective way to show that there's widespread support for an issue.
Absolutely. And it's not a one-time thing either. You have to be persistent. You have to be willing to adapt your strategies as things change. And you have to be in it for the long haul,
So it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. Now, something that came up a lot in our research is the question of legal protections. What happens if you speak up and face retaliation? Are there laws in place to protect you?
Yeah, that's a big concern. I mean, no one wants to risk their livelihood or their safety just for speaking their mind.
And thankfully, there are some protections in place, like whistleblower laws, for example, both at the federal and state levels. They're designed to protect people who report illegal or unethical activities from being punished by their employers.
So it's like a safety net for people who want to do the right thing.
Exactly. And a lot of organizations have their own internal policies, too, that prohibit retaliation. These policies help to create a culture where people feel safer speaking up. And then there are broader human rights protections, the right to freedom of expression, the right to be free from discrimination. These are fundamental rights that are enshrined in international law and in many domestic laws as well.
So you're not just out there on your own. There's a whole legal framework that can help protect you.
Precisely. And there was this really powerful example in one of our sources of an employee who successfully sued their employer for retaliation after reporting discrimination. It shows that these laws have teeth. They can actually be used to hold people accountable.
Okay, so last but not least, we got to talk about the impact. Like, what does speaking up for justice actually achieve?
Yeah.
Our sources talk about this ripple effect. Like, it's not just about the individual case, it's about creating these broader societal shifts.
Right. And it's amazing how it works. One person speaks up, then another and another. It creates this momentum. It shifts public opinion. It puts pressure on institutions to change. It's like a chain reaction.
So even small acts of speaking up can contribute to big changes.
Absolutely. And grassroots movements are so important here. They often start with just a few people who are passionate about an issue, and then they grow and they bring attention to things that might have been ignored before.
And then social media comes in and amplifies it all.
Right. It's like a megaphone. It allows these movements to connect with people all over the world, to build solidarity, to organize action on a global scale. It's really quite remarkable. And I think for our listeners, it's crucial to understand that they're part of this too. Their voices, their actions, they all contribute to this ongoing struggle for justice.
So it's not just about these big historical figures or these, professional activists. It's about all of us doing what we can.
Absolutely. And while it's true that there are risks, there's also this incredible power in collective action. When people come together and demand change, they can achieve some truly amazing things.
And even if you don't see immediate results, the act of speaking up itself is important. It's about standing up for what you believe in. It's about showing solidarity with those who are marginalized. It's about saying, hey, this isn't right, and we need to do better.
And that message, that commitment to justice, it resonates. It inspires others, it creates hope, and it ultimately moves us closer to a more just and equitable world for everyone.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with this thought. What can you do in your own life to contribute to a more just world? How can you use your voice, your actions to make a difference? It doesn't have to be something huge. Even small acts of kindness, of speaking out against injustice, of supporting those who are struggling, they all add up. So go out there and be a force for good. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.